You won't know the election result for weeks, months, maybe years after. Maybe you'll never know the election result, and that's what I'm concerned with.
Donald Trump has been telling us for months that the election is going to be rigged. The president has repeatedly said that voting by mail is particularly vulnerable to fraud.
The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that.
But is that actually true?
The issue is that it's not true. It's people have studied this. Academics have studied it. Journalists have studied it. The president put together a commission at the beginning of his term to try and find evidence of voter fraud, and they had to disband after just a few months because they couldn't find anything. They produced no results. So even when people are looking for evidence of voter fraud, they really can't find it because, frankly, it doesn't exist.
Voting by mail is nothing new in the US. In fact, 1 in 4 voted that way in 2016. 5 states relied on mail-in voting before the pandemic and had very few problems. The rate of voting fraud overall in the US is less than 0.001%. So why might people be skeptical of voting by mail?
We have a long tradition of voting in person, and so people might be somewhat skeptical of changing that system. The U.S. efforts have sort of bubbled up from successful states, so it really doesn't seem to have been contemplated to do kind of national changes to the system.
There are all sorts of protections in place, tracking numbers. You can track a pizza, you can track a vote, right?
A recent poll found that 72% of Americans support holding the 2020 election entirely by post. But can the states handle this influx?
I think states are well prepared to handle the glut of absentee balloting they're going to see this fall. They've really scaled up their infrastructure to be able to process a large number of ballots. Some of them have actually changed their election laws to make it more conducive to voting by mail.
I think the Postal Service has recommended at least 8 days. I would recommend put it in the mail 2 weeks early before the election, if you possibly can. If you request the absentee ballot as early as possible, fill it out, get it in, or use one of these secure drop boxes.
The much bigger issue is that people might not return their ballots on time, might not sign the back of them as they're supposed to in some states, might not have a witness sign them. That's going to count for a much bigger set of votes not cast as intended.
I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board.
Trump has accused Democrats of trying to steal the election by pushing mail-in voting.
But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that.
But does it actually benefit Democrats?
He has no idea what he's talking about.
It is assumed that there will be more Democrats based on who has been requesting the absentee voting. I think that is partially because the president has been trash talking vote by mail, frankly. So a lot of Republicans who listen to him say, well, I don't want to vote by mail. The president says it's not good, so I'm going to go vote in person.
Here in Michigan, Republican elected officials are asking Trump not to make these claims because people are receiving these mail-in ballots that they requested, and Republican elected officials do not want them to throw them away or to say, I can't do that against what Trump says. There is some real risk that by deterring those Republican mail-in voters, Trump could actually lead to lower votes for his side.
I think Trump's attack on the mail voting system comes from a few different motivations. One is that he's trailing in the polls, and so it's an uncomfortable place for him to be as a candidate, and he would like to change the narrative to some other topic besides the pandemic or protest over policing or other things that are giving him trouble. And by engaging in a battle with the election system or with Democrats who run elections in some states, he's trying to change the focus. It also seems as though he's setting up the possibility to undermine or question the validity of the elections if he were to lose.
States will be dealing with a flood of voters, with limited poll workers, more ballots via mail and system changes because of the pandemic. If there's a large number of mail-in votes, ballots may take longer to count.
I think there almost certainly will be some states where we don't have final results on election night. And people are just going to have to be patient with that and wait, because the alternative is to not count everyone's vote, and that would be bad.
The raw number of mail ballots that will be rejected this year is almost certainly going to be higher because more people are voting by mail, even if the rate stays the same, because the percentage of people who are using mail balloting will be so much higher, there will be more rejected ballots. I think it's very concerning. It shows the risk of absentee voting. As attractive as voting by mail is during the pandemic, as necessary as it is for a lot of people who are immune compromised or don't feel comfortable going to a face-to-face polling place, it comes with some challenges.
Trump has already laid the groundwork for contesting the results of the election, stoking fears about the integrity of mail-in ballots and suggesting the election could be stolen from him.
This is going to be the greatest election disaster in history. And by the way, you guys like to talk about Russia and China and other places? They'll be able to forge ballots, they'll forge them, they'll do whatever they have to do.
There is a deep concern about what will happen during the period of uncertainty while those ballots are being counted.
We actually saw Trump do some of this 2 years ago in the midterm elections in 2018. Again, this was pre-pandemic, but there were a number of ballots that were cast by mail, and some states did take a while to process the results of the election. The additional votes that were added tended to push the result in favor of the Democrats. And at the time, President Trump did raise questions about the validity of the election process in those states. He was questioning about it. This year, there's likely to be more of that because so many people will be voting by mail, and because turnout will be higher this year, it will probably take longer for states to render the outcome. Voters get to decide who takes office in January, and both the winner and the loser need to accept those results, whether they are happy with them or unhappy with them.